Let's look at the question. A class of 40 students took a mathematics test. The results are presented in the circle graph below. How many students earned a C grade? Our graph tells us 45% of students got a C grade. So I need to figure out what is 45% of 40 students. Given my setup, I'll change 45 to a decimal. Becomes 0.45. Of translates to multiplication, and 40 is 40. 0.45 times 40, and that will give us 18. So we say specifically, 18 students of the 40 got a C grade. Let's look at the question. A class of 40 students took a mathematics test. The results are presented in the circle graph below. How many students earned an A or a B on the test? To determine this, we need to know what percentage are we dealing with. According to our graph, students who earned an A were 15%. Students who earned a B were 30%. So if we're talking about A or B, it means one or both. So that means we're going to add the percentages up to find the total percentage of students who got A's or B's. So we're essentially asking, in this case, 15 plus 30 becomes 45%. 45% of 40 students is what we need to figure out. So first, our two percentages were 15 and 30%, representing A and B students respectively. I need to find the total amount, so I'll add them to get 45%, which represents students who get an A or a B. So we need to think in terms of the question. 45% of our 40 students is what? I'll change my 45% into a decimal. Becomes 0.45. Of becomes multiplication, and 40 is 40. When I multiply, I'll get 18, or more specifically, 18 students in this class received an A or a B. Let's look at the question where a class of 40 students took a mathematics test. The results printed below. What percent of the students failed the test? And how many failed the test? So we have two questions. Looking at the graph, we can determine what percent of the students failed the test. We use A, B, and C as passing grades, which means F is our failing grade for 10%. So 10% of the students failed the test. To determine how many failed the test, we'll take our percentage and multiply it times 40. We're essentially asking, what is 10% of 40 students? What is 10% of 40 students? Since we're looking at 10% of students failing. So I change 10% into a decimal, 0.1 or 0.10. Of is translated as multiplication. 40 is 40. When I multiply 0.10 times 40, I'll end up with 4. So in this case, 4 students failed the test. Let's look at the question where a class of 40 students took a mathematics test. The results given in the graph. How many more students earned a C than earned a B grade? So if we're going to determine this, we need to figure out individually how many students earned a C and earned a B. Using our graph, we see that 45% of the students got a C on the test. And we see that 30% got a B. So for a C grade, we said that was 45% of the students, and a B grade was 30%. Now keep in mind they're asking for how many students, not what percentage. I'm essentially saying 45% of my total population is what? So as a decimal, I need to change that percentage into a decimal before I multiply. Translates to multiplication. I'm saying what is 45% of 40, meaning what is 0.45 times 40. That's going to be 18. Doing the same thing for my B grades, 30% of 40 translates to 0.3 or 0.30, either one, times 40 students. And when I do that, I end up with 12. So a C translates to 18 students, a B translates to 12 students. The question being, how many more students earn C grades versus B grades? And that would be 18 minus 12 for 6, or specifically 6 students. Let's look at the question where a class of 40 students took a mathematics test. The results presented in the graph. What percent of the entire class passed the test? So I'm considering the entire class, and I'm considering what is the passing grade. In this course, we consider A, B, and C's as passing grades. F, of course, is not. So we should add up all the percentages that consist of a passing grade, and then we'll find out of 40 students, what amount of students does that percentage equate to. So looking at my A, B, and C regions, I have 15, 30, and 45%, which when you add up, we'll get 90%. Again, from 30 plus 15 plus 45. Now I'm saying, what is 90% of my total, which is 40 students? As a decimal, 90% becomes 0.9 or 0.90. Translates to multiplication, and 40 is 40. Now multiply 0.9 times 40 to find the total number, and that will be 36, or more specifically, 36 students passed the test. Let's look at the question where student research to attend the Community College of Baltimore County is broken down in the following chart. What percent of the cost provided is for tuition? So we see again our graph is the cost per term at CCBC, and we want to figure out what percentage, what amount of that circle it is dedicated to tuition. First of all, we need to find what the total amount of everything is. What is the total cost for this term at CCBC? Which means we'll add $16.50 for tuition, to $120 for fees, to $400 for books. And in a question like this, that's what we always want to do, is find the total amount considered. And in this case, that's going to be $2,170, or $2,170 total costs, where tuition is going to be $16.50. We're essentially asking tuition is what percentage of total costs. Let's put in what we know. Tuition is $1,650. Is translates to equals. The phrase what or what number or which number translates to our variable. We'll call that x. Of translates to multiplication. Total cost is our total costs. 2,170. So to solve for x, we need to isolate it, which means we need to get rid of the 2,170, and the simplest way is to divide each side by the number. Which means, and I'm going to reverse the sides here, x is equal to that fraction as a decimal, which comes out to be 0.76036. Next, I need to convert this to a percentage. Currently it's in decimal form. So to change it to a percentage, I multiply this value by 100. I want to round my percentages to the nearest tenth of a percent, so I use my rounding. After moving my decimal point 2 spaces to the right, that would put my new decimal point at between the 6 and the 0. Using rounding, should I round 0 up to 1 or keep it at 0? Looking at the previous term is a 3, it's less than 5, so I keep it as 76.0 or 76.
There were 37,917 crimes in the city of Baltimore, Maryland in 2010. This chart shows this broken down by category in the circle graph below. What category accounts for the most amount of crimes? We can see from our graph that larceny and theft account for 16,298 of the crimes in the city of Baltimore. Therefore, this is our category that has the most amount of crimes. What percent does this represent? So the question is, larceny and theft is what percent of the total crime? We can translate this problem as part is percent of whole. The amount of larceny and theft is given as 16,298 is translate into an equal sign. We don't know our percent, so we use the variable p. Of, we write as a multiplication sign, and the total crime is 37,917. We will solve for p by dividing both sides by 37,917. Using our calculator, we get 0.4298 ... Next, we will change this into a percent by multiplying by 100, which will move the decimal place 2 places to the right. And we get 42.98. The problem says to round to the nearest tenth of a percent. So we will cut the number here. The 8 tells the 9 to go up to a 10. So when the 9 becomes a 10, the 1 from the 10 will be in this place, and we'll add the 1 to the 2, making it a 3. And the 0 will stay a 0, and therefore we have 43%. What percent of the crimes are burglaries? As you can see from our circle graph, burglaries accounted for 7,573 crimes in Baltimore, Maryland. The question then is basically, what percent of crimes are burglaries? We can also simplify this problem as percent of whole is part. We don't know our percent, so we'll use P for that variable. Of, we'll write as a multiplication sign. The whole, or crimes, total crimes, is given as 37,917. Is will translate to an equal sign, and the part is our burglaries, which accounts for 7,573. We need to solve for P, so we will divide both sides by 37,917. Using our calculator, we get P equals 0.1997 We need to change this decimal then into a percent by multiplying by 100, which will move the decimal point 2 places to the right, giving us 19.972 ... The problem says to round to the nearest tenth of a percent, so we will cut the number here. The 7 tells the 9 to go up to a 10, which will round this 9 up to a 10, and the 10 will then round this to a 2. So we get 20.0%.